You know what I'm going to say. You know, Trump was right again. I hate to say it. No, I don't. I don't hate to say it. It's great to say it. I wish it weren't about a coup and treason, but Trump has been right about everything. Go back to the very beginning when he said they wiretapped him. Yes, he may not have had the technical language because they don't wiretap, but they were spying on him. We found out yesterday from DNI Gabbard that the impeachment was a complete hoax, total scam by the deep state, by all the Obama crew, by the Clinton crew, everybody. We're going to get into it briefly. We aren't going to do a ton on it, but I do want to just sort of package it up in a small box with some of the names because it's important. It's I'm like you, frustrated that there isn't some consequences happening because this is clearly conspiracy, by the way, which I think is still going on. Trump is the only president whose own party prevents him from doing recess appointments. We control the House and the Senate, and we can't get a piece of legislation passed that's supported by over 80% of the country. Why? Because John Thune doesn't want it to pass. He's the only one who can tell you the real answer. But it certainly seems to this ordinary American like that's all part of keeping Trump weak and keeping Republicans weak and allowing the Democrats and the leftists to control elections through fraud and corruption. All right, we're going to get into it. I'm your host, Paul Sarkis. This is The Ordinary American, and on this show, we are an anti-leftist show. And anti-leftist means we are anti-Democrat. The Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party of John Kennedy or Bill Clinton. Nope. This is a full-on leftist party. If you are voting for Democrats, you are breaking yourself into jail. That's the mantra. And that's what we try to do here, is to try to drive as many people away from Democrats as possible. Please, if you can, like, subscribe, follow. That helps. Pass on the episode. Make any comments. Send in requests if you've got topics you'd like us to go a little deeper on. TheOrdinaryAmerican@proton.me. On X, we're The Ord American. You know, it's probably true. We should be on other social media, but at the moment, the limited attention span focuses just on the X. And you can go in there and see in our thread pretty much everything that we talk about. All right, let's get into it. Trump was right. I got to find some lightness because it gets super dark super quickly if I think too much about it. And I like to stay optimistic. So I think a lot about, what would the Democrats be thinking right now? Trump's in office. He's dismantling their entire 100 years of planning, globalism, neocon nonsense, City of London stuff, petrodollar, theft, wealth extraction, the abuse of the American taxpayer, the abuse of the American military. He's dismantling all of it. What must they be thinking? Because I love the Rocky movies, I think of Rocky 2. Side note, young people don't know enough about Rocky. My teenage daughter, very few of her friends have ever even heard of these movies. I like to consider myself having a big check mark in one of the major father boxes by making sure she's seen the Rocky movies. Rocky 2. Apollo is perseverating, good word, over Rocky and how he didn't beat him as bad as he wanted to, and some people say Rocky beat him. And he's planning the next fight. And Tony, his manager, looks at him and says, "I saw you beat that man like no man's ever been beat before." And he kept on coming. He's no good for us. We got to move on from him. And Apollo just dismisses him. Isn't that what the Democrats are saying right now? This guy keeps on coming. You can't stop him. Even with all the things they've thrown at him. He drill baby drills in his first term. Wildly productive, we're seeing now. Hugely productive as we're becoming the major supplier of oil and natural gas for the world. He has done so much with them trying to get him. They committed a coup and rigged the election, corrupted it in 2020. That's true. But if he had been elected, there's no way he would have been this productive in 2020. So it's like he keeps on coming and they can't get rid of him. They've tried killing him at least, 2 or 3 times that we know of. They've marshaled the entire federal government against him, including the CIA, at least I think 5 countries and their intelligence communities, including MI6, and they can't get him. They must be pulling their hair out saying, he keeps on coming. And he does. Okay? And he does. So what did we find out yesterday? Simple. In the impeachment, they relied, in 2019, they relied on a whistleblower who the leftists, Democrats, deep state, even the Republicans, worked to keep his name a secret, claiming privacy. He was only being kept a secret because he was a member of the Democrat Party that was working on trying to get rid of Trump back in 2015, 16, 17. His name is Chiamarella, I think is how you pronounce it. And even John Roberts worked diligently to keep his name out of the press back in 2019. Why? Well, because we would have known that he was working with the Obama crew the whole time to try to get Trump, number one. But number two, he was whistleblowing with secondhand information. I heard from a friend that Johnny said that Trump's a bad guy. Something like that. And the whistleblower rules don't allow that. So what did the ICE Intelligence Community Inspector General, ICIG, do? Michael Atkinson, he changed the guidelines so that that could be permitted. Gabbard released the documents so we get to see all this. So now it's no longer just people like us who believe it. Now we know it. It's that simple. But Trump's right. It's another scam, another corruption, another fraud, another attempted coup. They tried everything they could do, and he kept on coming. As I said yesterday, he's the only guy who isn't compromised. How do I know that? Because he's been investigated by every single group around the globe since 2015. And unless someone's going to try to get me to believe that they've really got something, they're just waiting for it to get ripe enough to use, and they haven't found that time, they already would have used it. And when you have real, evidence, you don't need hoaxes. Every one of these things is a hoax, every one of them. So Trump was right. DNI Gabbard released the documents, thumbs up. It is frustrating that there aren't any consequences. I hope that means yet. Because us humans, if there's no consequences, we rarely change behaviors. Okay? So we're going to move on to other things because there's a lot of other good things to get to today. We got a smorgasbord of stuff that I think hasn't got enough press, partly because this is getting a lot of the press. Okay, so let's move on. I just remembered, I want to do one thing. I super dropped the ball yesterday. I like to mention these medical things because I think they're important. I've told you before, sorry, I was looking at the phone to try to read it. The left needs us unhealthy physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's why we talk a lot about God and praying. I hope everybody will pray today if they haven't already. Build your relationship with God. The greatest life hack we can do. Single greatest. Pray every day. So we need to do these things. And I've mentioned the great Nicholas Hulscher, and he goes out and he finds all these medical atrocities with the pharma companies and all the studies that they don't publish and what they really say and what they don't tell us. And so I mentioned something about birth control yesterday, and I totally bungled the whole thing and didn't have it memorized, and so I apologize. So I want to read it to you. This is from the great Nicholas Hulscher. By the way, if you go on the X, The Ord American, it's the first one right now. Pfizer gave over 13,000 women disabling brain tumors with their birth control injections. A massive study of 61 million women found Depo-Provera shots used by 25% of women increases risk of meningioma by 143%. Criminal enterprise Pfizer now faces a tsunami of lawsuits. That was Nicholas Hulscher. Okay? If you use that birth control method, I guess reach out and find out what's going on with those lawsuits. Pfizer should be punished to increase those kinds of tumors by 143%. And I think what he's getting at is they knew it. They knew it. And that what we find out is that's the pattern in a lot of this medical stuff. They knew it. They just prioritized profit. And because they could corrupt the government, they did. All right? We might come back to a couple of other health things, but I wanted to apologize because I bungled that yesterday and get that information out to you. Okay. All right. First things, we're going to go to Marco Rubio. One of the things I always think about when I'm talking about Trump and his people now is Trump's remarkable ability to hold no grudges. I mean, if you've been around long enough, you remember when it was little Marco and he was in that primary fight in what was it, 2015, 16, and they were brutal to each other. And now he's calling him the greatest Secretary of State of all time. Trump doesn't hold grudges. You know, in like the psychology world, they'll call it rupture and repair. He ruptures and then he repairs right away. I think he uses forgiveness. And I think it's a great quality. And I think it gives the other person, like Marco Rubio, he's now serving the country as this unbelievable Secretary of State. We'll get into something that he announced yesterday or the day before. And we wouldn't have got that if Trump was a different guy. If Trump was a different guy, that would have been like a blood feud for generations. So we don't have to worry about that with Trump. So we get Marco Rubio. What does Rubio do? By the way, clearly it's the Trump administration, but Rubio is clearly doing a lot. So we give a lot of foreign aid. People like me would say we should stop giving all foreign aid. Rubio has said we're not going to give foreign aid to people who hate our country or who do, attack us or do negative things to affect Americans. He also just said we're not going to give our foreign aid any longer to this sick web of nonprofits and NGOs that is like a spider web of awful. Total corruption. The money never, makes it to the citizens, ever. It gets grifted off, sucked off. Everybody's taking a, chance at the water fountain and sucking off and wetting their beak with our money through this awful web of non-government non-NGOs and nonprofits. Rubio said, no more. We're giving money direct to the countries. What does that sound like? It sounds like what we talk about all the time. Trump is removing the globalist institutions, the UN, NATO, World Health Organization. He's going direct with countries. NAFTA, direct with countries. You can see it in the Iran situation, dealing direct with Pakistan, dealing direct with Egypt, dealing direct with Turkey, dealing direct with Israel, dealing direct with Saudi Arabia. They're involved, okay? China is calling Iran direct. No UN, you never even hear that name anymore. So now what Rubio is saying, yeah, that's how we're going to do whatever financial aid we do give. We're going to give it direct to the country. That way we can put stipulations in, we can follow it, we can do it. By the way, will there still be corruption? Probably, sadly, but less. Less. So it will go into the country. I think that's a very big deal. It hadn't got enough press. It's not a long story, but I think it's an important one. Not only is the Trump doctrine really to focus on Main Street and not Wall Street here, but that's going to be the same thing with our aid. It goes to the people, not to the NGOs who then play corruption with it. All right, I think that's an important story to mention. Now, I'm going to skip over. I'm going to come to this one. We've been told illegal aliens, they do crimes at less rates than us. They're great. Somebody on X yesterday, or maybe it was YouTube, I can't remember, said for one of our videos, and one of the topics we talked about when we were talking about the fact that we're getting rid of the illegals, which is increasing the wages of the working class Americans, and how great that is because we're getting rid of the distortions. We tackled that yesterday. And they came on and they sort of attacked and said, that's terrible. I'm trying to renovate my house in California and no Americans can do it. We need the illegals. They were providing a service. Yeah, that's anti-America first, okay? It is true that you are paying below market wages for those people. And it might also be true that they're doing a good job, but they're not our citizens. So you're paying them, and meanwhile there's American citizens that can do that job, and yes, they'd want to get paid more because you distort the market when you pay the illegals. If there's 10 people fighting over 2 jobs, the wages are going to go down. If there are 2 people looking for 2 jobs, the wages are going to go up or stay the same. And if there's 1 person looking for 2 jobs, the wages are going to go up, and then somebody else is going to come in because the wages go up. That's how this works. People were getting on me about this with regard to the illegals. And then I saw this story. In 2024, there were 13,000 murders committed by illegals. In 2024, there were 20,000 murders total. That's 64% committed by illegals. That doesn't seem like they're the best of us. That doesn't seem worth whoever that was who said, I'm getting cheaper, kitchen cabinetry so we can put up with these murders. Now, Trump is doing the exact right thing. He's deporting them, and we are draining our economy of all of their distortions. And this is one of the biggest places. We see historical lows in these kinds of murder rates now and violent crimes because we're getting rid of the illegals. And as I say all the time, it is not difficult to limit violent crime in society. You just have to want to do it. Bukele did it. Milei is doing it. Trump did it in DC. Trump's doing it in Memphis, Tennessee. Law enforcement knows where the small number of people who do most of the violent crimes, those 13,000 murders did not have to happen. Under Trump, they are not happening. That is a giant difference. So while the deep state and the Democrats and even the Republicans are trying to make his life difficult or commit a coup or treason, scams to try to get him out of office, he's fixing this. They allowed this. How productive could Trump be right now if he didn't have a Republican Senate holding up his appointments or holding up the SAVE Act? If the SAVE Act was behind us, if we already had it in place, think about the resources that wouldn't have to go necessarily to the next election to make sure that it's not no resources, it's just fewer. And murders. Think about all those 13,000 lives that we could have saved. The left needs chaos and suffering so that your central nervous system is jacked up all the time and you're begging for big government to fix things. I saw that stat and it just, it makes me angry. All right. We've done this a few times. All Family Pharmacy. They're not a sponsor, but I use them. And I like to mention it because people read some of these things that I put out and they hear about ivermectin and fenbendazole and mebendazole and they don't know where to get it. You can get it. This is the empowerment that something like what Trump's doing brings to us. You don't have to go to some doctor who's going to listen to you for 3 minutes and then try to, get you on some chemo thing. No, you can get it yourself. All Family Pharmacy. Great prices. You got to fill out a form and they'll get it to you. Ivermectin, fenbendazole, mebendazole, and other things. Lots of other things. I got some magnesium from them the other day. Okay, I highly recommend it. And look on my thread for Dr. Makis, particularly if you or somebody in your family has cancer. It is an option. We don't need multiple billions of dollars, triple blind studies if there are hundreds of thousands of people who are using these things in real time and then sharing the information. You can skip the study. There's no value in it because we have the real information. All right, All Family Pharmacy. All right, one of my favorite topics, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton came out, the Russians said that she was on heavy tranquilizers and she was prone to fits of rage and anger. Yeah, okay? She came out and said a bunch of nonsense. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He needs to call in the experts. Congress needs to either remove him or stop him before he does something that he can't unwind. And then Trump announces on Truth Social, I think, I'm not sure about that, that the Iranians called him and they want to talk again. Trump is smarter than you, Hillary. He's smarter than you. He beat you, number one, even with you corrupting that election. You corrupted Bernie out. Bernie was willing to go along with it, but you couldn't corrupt Trump out. And he's smarter than you, and he's doing more good for the world than you. Because you're a great crime boss. But you would have been a terrible president. So she comes out and says he needs the experts. Yeah, like we need the experts. You can just imagine who she'd want to send in. All the people that got us in the quagmire for 47 years with the Iranians. What has Trump done? He's gone and flipped the entire thing. By the way, I don't see the Iranians doing anything. They're not attacking our boats. Boats are going through the strait. Trump is winning, which means we're winning. Okay? Hillary is an idiot, and she starts trying to stay relevant, or maybe she, who knows? We don't know. Maybe progress is being made and there would be consequences. I don't know. I'm not holding out any, hope for that, but who knows? I thought it was a weird comment that she would make, especially considering that obviously the Iranians were going to call back. What's their play? Really? They think that Trump's going to let them have a nuke? That's not happening. They have no play. They have nothing, as Trump says. Okay? So, Hillary, up to her old shenanigans. Okay. Now, this next story. So, Scott Bessent, superstar. I mean, I don't know. I never heard of him. And I read the Wall Street Journal and try to pay attention. And I had never heard of him before the last election cycle. He is awesome. And one of the things he said, it was like a subtitle, I think, in a Bloomberg article. And I don't have that. I don't pay for that, so I couldn't read the article. But basically what the article was saying, but by the way, you can put that into AI and they'll tell you what the article says, which I did. What he said is that there's an executive order in progress. Trump's announced this before. I think what it's saying is to make it so that banks have to be able to prove that all of their clients are American citizens. In other words, he's going to restrict illegal aliens' access to our banking system. There's a cascading effect of good things for Americans that comes from that. Not the least of which is, it is much more difficult to send money back to your home country if you have no access to the banking system. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult. Now, another thing that I think that's going to do is that it's going to start to highlight the benefits of Bitcoin. Iran has been mining Bitcoin, and Iran is now saying that, well, when they were going to get tolls, they're not going to get tolls. They wanted it in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is outside of what you would call the financial system. So just like an individual, if they have their seed phrase, can cross any border, fly anywhere, and still have access to their Bitcoin, a nation state can as well. And so can an illegal alien. But getting them out of our banking system is going to stop a whole bunch of things from happening. By the way, I suspect strongly it'll assist in getting all of them off of the fraud and theft of our tax dollars too, because it's got to go off and into banking systems. Get them out. Okay, another way to get more illegals to voluntarily leave. Scott Bessent, tremendous. All right, now I saved a bunch of time, hopefully 10 or 15 minutes here, because I want to talk about, there's a partial, there was going to be a teachers' strike in LA. And because I used to live in LA and have a bunch of friends who are LA teachers, which I'm going to get into, they avoided the strike. So I wanted to talk about it as it relates to the leftism and the money flywheel and the corruption, because it gives some great sort of examples of how this works. So the LA Unified School District is a school district, and it has elected people. Those are corruption. I'm ahead of myself. Those elections are all corrupted, in my opinion. So who knows how real the people are who are on there. The head of the LAUSD is this guy named Carvello, and he's being investigated by the FBI for corruption. He would have been the person that would be negotiating on behalf of the citizens, of the taxpayer. And then he's negotiating with the SEIU, a union, who represents the teachers. And there's a few unions that represents a bunch of different types of employees in the system, but I think that's the biggest one. So you got a new person, by the way, because that guy who's being investigated isn't able to do it because he's being investigated for corruption. So the LAUSD is supposed to negotiate on behalf of the taxpayer. Now, what's their connection to the taxpayer? Well, in theory, their connection to the taxpayer would be that they get elected by the taxpayer, and that if they don't do their job well, the taxpayer will unelect them, and then they'll lose all their benefits of that job. And while that is, in theory, true and can sometimes play out, if the elections are all corrupted, then that's not a real dilemma. It's not a real consequence. So then they're really not accountable to the people. Now, even if it were true that you could vote them out, because there's a bunch of them, they're done by districts, and I'll bet you, I don't know this for sure, but they have some at-large seats and other things. They can hide in the group, and then there's power and incumbency. So it's not really like they have a consequence. If they misspend the taxpayers' money, what happens? Not much. That's important. Point number one. Point number two, the teachers' unions. Who do they represent? They represent the teachers. What's their main focus? Not the students. This is the giant, disconnect. Everybody sort of thinks teachers teach and students, so the unions are for students. No, they're not. They're not. They represent the teachers to get more pay and more benefits, which they did in this particular negotiation that just wrapped up last night. They got a pretty massive pay increase, more healthcare benefits. They got some limits on subcontractors and some other things which are important, but not really to know for this particular story. The point is, LA Unified School District has already said they're going to have something like a hundreds of millions of dollar deficit. And then they're giving raises. What? Well, here's the problem. This is the Milton Friedman third-party payer effect. Those people on the LA Unified School District, they are spending taxpayer money on the union. They don't care about the quality or the cost. Let's add one more thing in. When the union pay goes up, the dues go up. The dues get given back to the Democrats, which are the LA Unified School District people, all Democrats. So as they're negotiating with them, they realize, well, if I give them a big enough raise, that raises the bucket of money they donate, and I'm going to get myself a bigger chunk of that for my re-election campaign. That makes it harder for an incumbent to run against me. Flywheel. Flywheel. Corruption. Flywheel. This is why I saw, what did I see? I'll probably bungle this, and then I have to make it up to you tomorrow, but I think I'm close. I think it's like 70% of Americans in a recent poll said that the cost of living is because of the corruption and theft of government. Yeah. I've seen it said out there in the X spaces and other places. We don't have a debt problem. We have a fraud problem. Now, we have the fraud squad, J.D. Vance, out hopefully attacking this, and they're making some progress. But it is massive. This is fraud. This is quid quid pro quo. Now, it's technically legal because the LA Unified School District does have a right legally to negotiate these contracts. You know, leftism. Build these institutions and they're just stealing your money. By the way, all of their donations go to Democrats. All Democrats are in the LAUSD, and so on. Back and forth. Giving giant raises, which raises the dues, which raises the donations, all while LA Unified School District has had to slash hundreds of millions from their budget to try to bring it in alignment. And they have a massive decrease in the number of students. Massive decrease. If I read the numbers right, what they'll admit to, and I think the number's much higher than this, is $27,000 per student is what they're spending. And we all know, and I've talked a lot about it, they are not producing results at all. So what are the taxpayers getting? Well, not much. They're taking people out, homeschooling more, and leaving. We talk about this all the time. This is leftism. Leftism doesn't work. How do we know it doesn't work? Because nobody wants it. Nobody goes to the leftist countries to become citizens, and nobody goes to the leftist states to become citizens. North Korea. How many people go there to hey, I want to get in North Korea and become a North Korean citizen? How about Cuba? How about Venezuela? How about Iran before this? Nobody goes to these places. There are a lot of people moving to China to be Chinese citizens. And by the way, even if there were, would they accept them? In this South Korea and North Korea, the great example we brought up the other day. North Korea is terrible, South Korea has flourished. Free, left. In America, California, New York, Massachusetts, Oregon, Washington, losing money and people. If leftism worked, why don't people want to stay there who helped get the leftists in charge? And this LAUSD situation is just one, it's sort of a small example, but it's the example. It's all corruption, it's all a scam. It's extremely frustrating. And then it's sort of like, I think I've mentioned this before, that great scene from Braveheart, where Robert the Bruce gets tricked by his father, and he comes home, and he by tricked, by the way, he gave up William Wallace to the English. So he comes home and he says, "Father, you deceived me." And the father said, "You allowed yourself to be deceived. You always knew my heart. If you're still voting for Democrat, you're allowing yourself to be deceived. They're showing you who they are." None of these states are changing their policies. They're all acknowledging that people are leaving. They're just not saying, "Oh, I see you're leaving. I ought to change my policies." No. They're doing more of it. More of it. Karen Bass brought up something about housing. They're going to do another $300 million. I don't know where they're getting that for housing. What are they going to do? Funnel it through a nonprofit. I don't know what it will take to get them to stop. That's why this show is an anti-leftist show. The Democrat Party got taken over. As I've said before, Barack Obama could not run today on his platform from 2008. I don't think he could probably even run on his 2012 platform, but certainly not 2008. He could not win the primary in a Democrat race. And as we're seeing, all of the elections are corrupted. All of them. There's no corruption. That's dark. I'm not a dark person, but we also got to see that that's the case. Why I got some criticism recently about why am I so pro-Trump? I'm so pro-Trump because he's right. Because he's the only advocate working for ordinary Americans. He is not compromised despite what people are led to believe by the mainstream media and people like Gollum, James Carville. He's not compromised, and he is not working for the deep state or for the globalists. He's working for ordinary Americans. So I'll be critical of Trump when I see something that he's not right on. He's doing the right thing with Iran. He's winning. I don't know when we're going to see our gas prices go down. I checked before we came on, I think gas prices were down to $92 a barrel. Not gas prices. Oil prices were down to $92 a barrel. So maybe they'll start to come down. But he's doing the right thing. And he's winning. And he's dismantling these systems. Crime is down. He's dropping the drug boats who are trying to come into America left and right. Awesome. Okay? Again, we've been told, if you're old enough like I am to be around in the 80s, we were told you can't stop the supply of drugs from coming in. It's just too much. You can't stop it. You got to stop the demand. Just say no. What does Trump do? No, that's not true. We can stop the supply. We're just going to kill them when they come to our shores because they're enemy combatants if they're trying to bring drugs in that are killing our people. Simple. So we're pro-Trump on this show because he's doing the best thing for ordinary Americans. And the left has been trying to get him since 2015. So my gloves go high when I see the left against somebody. I think, okay, that's somebody that we should pay attention to. So that's why I'm pro-Trump. And you know, I've said often, you don't have to be pro-Trump to not vote for Democrats. You just have to be smart enough to know not to vote for Democrats. The great Dan Bongino, I say it all the time. It's worth saying again. The Republicans may not be the solution to your problem, but the Democrats are the cause of your problem. That's why we focus on being anti-leftist and stop voting for Democrats. That's the drive. Okay, I checked before I came on Truth Social because it's becoming a daily thing. Like, you got to see what he says because he just drops bombs. He was talking a little bit about the oil and the European need for oil and natural gas and how the Brits won't open up the North Sea to drill, which they could, and there's huge, vast quantities of it there. And that's too bad. And they may learn the hard way, or they'll just buy it from us, which is fine for us. But, you know, we're going to need it. All right? That's the show today. Appreciate you being here. Please pass it on. Like, subscribe, follow. It really helps us gain some traction. We're trying to participate in the fight, the MAGA fight for the midterms. So if you can, like, subscribe, follow, send us emails, tell us what you want to hear about or go into deeper dives on. The Ordinary American at proton.me, and on X, The Ord American. And hopefully you'll pray today. All right, I'm rooting for you. Please root for me.